Hi everyone, this is Shane from University Relations Digital Team, and I'm just creating a short little video here to show you how to create users and assign permissions within Cascade. So the first place we need to go is to the administrative panel where you get options for creating users. So if you click that hamburger menu in the top right, you'll see administration. Now the options I see here are a little bit more than what you'll see as a site administrator. I am administrator for the whole CMS, so I have a few more options here, but the ones we're mostly considered about are users and groups. So let's click on users. Now the first thing you'll notice here is that under users we have a big list. There's 3,400 users that are currently in the CMS, and the reason for that is because we asked our colleagues at IST to connect Cascade to the LDAP server, which is basically authentication for every employee within the U of A. Now, this 3,400 people doesn't include every single employee. We actually filtered the number out of LDAP to only include those people who we think might need access to the CMS. Now, that doesn't mean that the person that you need to grant access to will necessarily be here, but chances are they will. So for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to pick on a couple of my friends. The first person I'm going to look up here is Joyce Yu. Now you notice here in the search field, because there's 3,400 people, we definitely don't want to be searching through the list page by page, but the search functionality here is actually really robust. So I can search up Joyce by her last name, I can search her up by her first name, I can even do her CCID, and the search field is really responsive. It's really snappy. So I would definitely recommend that anytime you're using this platform that you go through search. Now, I wanted to show you an example of what happens if there's a person that you need to add who's not in this list. So I'm going to pick on another friend of mine, Cynthia Strawson, and you can see that Cynthia's not here. If I try her CCID, nothing under that. If I try her last name, nothing under that. So in a case where there's a person you need to add as a user who doesn't show up in here, you actually need to request us to add them in. And the way that you do that is you go to ualberta.ca/cascade-cms. This is a website that we've created for updates and training. And under our support form, there is an option down at the bottom here for security and permissions. So if you fill out this form and select the category for security and permissions, then we can go ahead and request IST to specifically add a person that you need in order to create a user. But like I said, for the most part, everybody that is currently listed here should include most of the people that you will need to add as users. So if we go back to Joyce, I want to show you what it looks like when we go to edit a user who hasn't actually got any permissions yet. So if I look at Joyce, right now she's only set up with 2 sets of permissions here. Under groups, she's set up as a user, and under roles, she's set up as a Cascade user. So everybody who's in this list by default has those 2 set up. And what that means is that groups and Cascade user means that you can sign into the platform, but without any other permission set up, you can't do anything else. You can't access any other websites, or you can't access any tools. So if I was going to want to change Joyce's access, I would click this edit button up here. The first tab that opens up is her login information, which we don't want to edit because that's provided by LDAP. We want to go under memberships and roles. So within this option, you have 3 things that you can edit. So I'm actually going to start with roles because that's probably the simplest thing to explain. So roles are what roles you have within the whole software itself. So you see here that there's 3 roles. You probably won't see these 3 when you try to do this. You have the option to add Cascade Administrator, which is sort of a site admin, and then Administrator, which is administrator for the whole CMS. So in this case, I'm just going to leave Joyce as a Cascade user for now. I'm going to pretend that she's just going to be a web user. And that's set. So for most of the people that you're setting up, you don't want to change that. The other option you can set up here is to set the default site that they see when they log into the platform. And that's, again, really just trying to make it a little bit easier for them. So I see every site that's currently created within Cascade. You will only see the sites that you have administrator access for. So if I wanted to add Joyce, let's say, to the UAlberta homepage, that's it there. Now that's her set as her default site, but we still need to actually set up her permissions to see things. And that's where we get into groups. So the way that we've set up groups is that we've created two different types of access that you get through groups. You get the kind of access that allows you to use different parts of the application, and the kind of access that allows you to access different content within a site. So if I go here to UAlberta Access, you'll see that there are essentially 5 different types of access here. Starting with Read, that allows you to see the content within the CMS. Going up to Edit, that allows you to go and edit a piece of content that's within the CMS. Then you have the access to Write, so that allows you to create new content or write new content within the CMS. You have the option to Publish, so that allows you to publish new content within the CMS. And then lastly, you have bypass workflow. So by default, Cascade will assign people workflows, which means that, in order to publish, you have to typically send things up to an administrator further up, who will then approve the publication, and then the changes will go live. For most of our sites, they don't use workflows. So for most people, bypass workflow will be something you need to add as a default. So in the case of Joyce here, if I just wanted to give her read access to the UAlberta website, I could start with that. And then we see that she has those roles submitted. So I'll submit that. And now after submitting it, Joyce now has UAlberta access to read and UAlberta access to bypass workflows. But this won't necessarily allow her to access that content yet, because we need to add the site that she's going to edit, or going to read in this case. So if I go back under memberships and roles and choose group, I need to select which content she can see. So if I go back to UAlberta, you can see that we've added a whole bunch of different sub-levels of content that people can access. So for instance, people who have access to UAlberta Campus Life can edit the Campus Life section. People who have access to UAlberta Current Students can edit the Current Students section. Now, in this case, UAlberta Global means that somebody can have access to the entire folder under that site. So if I add Joyce to UAlberta Global, select that, now she should be able to view the UAlberta folder when she goes into the sites and be able to read it within that folder. So as an administrator, I can actually assume her identity. So I'm going to do that now. So if I go to sites for Joyce, there's UAlberta. And if I click on this and then go to page here for that, let's go to Campus Life, go to that. So here we go, Joyce can see this page now. Now what you will notice is that she doesn't have the option to publish. And if I go to add content, there's nothing here that she can add currently. So I'm going to resume my identity now. And I'll go back to edit her. Oops. So now if I go back to Joyce here and I give her the option to publish, edit, and write, I choose that, submit. Now all of those pages are there for her. I'm going to assume her identity again. And now we should see a few changes to what she can see. So you can see now there's a publish button where there wasn't previously a publish button. And now under add content, here are all the options for content that can be added now. So I'm going to go back here. So if I wanted now to make Joyce an administrator and somebody who has access to add other users, I'd have to go back here, and under her roles, I would have to choose Cascade Administrator. So now, as a Cascade Administrator, Joyce would have the option to add permissions for other users. So if I go back here and assume her identity, and now I click on that hamburger menu and go to administration, you can see here I can now have the ability to add users and add groups as Joyce. So currently I'm viewing the Cascade as Joyce, and these are the options I see. So as Joyce, I can come in here and edit these users. Now, let's say I wanted to make an edit to somebody else. So I'm actually just going to choose somebody at random. We'll choose Anthony Briggs. So again, he has nothing set up currently. If I edit this as Joyce, I go to choose groups, you'll notice that I only have the ability to choose those things which I've been granted permission to do. So as Joyce, I can only add in the access to Alberta, and I can only add in the Alberta global content. I can't change this user to do anything that I don't have access to. And that's as we want it, because as site admins, we want you to be able to create users for the site that you control. We obviously don't want other site admins adding users for websites that don't belong to them. So I'm going to go back to my identity now. And there's one other thing that I want to show you, which is groups. So what a group is it allows you to define which content can be editable by a specific person. So in the case of Alberta, as I showed you before, there are a whole bunch of individual pages that we've granted access to for all these tiny little sections of the main Alberta website. So if I wanted to create a new group for a specific section, so I'm going to say here, I'm going to add group. This group name is going to be Alberta Shane test. So when it comes to naming a group name, it's critical that you always begin the group name with the name of your site. And the reason for that is because you can't have duplicate group names, and group names are actually shared across the whole CMS. So if you create a group by the name of news, then if somebody else already has that group name, you're not going to be able to use it. So in order to create unique group names, we want to begin each group name with the name of your site. Now, I've created this group, Shane Tests. I'm going to choose users to add to it. So I'll start with adding Joyce. Choose her. We'll choose a role of Cascade user, the basic role. And I can actually add also other people to this. So I could add myself, for example. Okay, so now we have a group for Alberta Shane test. I submit that. Here's my group. That's great. If I go back here to users, and now I go back to Joyce, you can see that she's been added to that group. Now, currently, that group has been created, we've been added to it, but the group hasn't been assigned to any content within UAlberta. One critical thing about creating groups, as site admins, if you create a group and don't add yourself, you actually can't see that group in this list. So right now, if I go back to Joyce, so I'm going to assume her identity. So watch what happens with here if I create a group. So right now you can see that she only sees the groups that she's a member of. Now if I go to create a group as Joyce, I'm going to call this one Joyce Alberta. See, got to keep to my own rules. Joyce test. I'm going to choose Shane as a user of that, but I'm not going to include Joyce. If I submit that, it gives me an error. It says you do not have permissions for this requested asset. So if I go back to groups, I don't see that group that I just created as Joyce, who has site admin access at this point. Now, if I go back and resume my identity as Shane, who has the CMS access, there's Joyce's test. I can see that one. So if you, by chance, do create a group and forget to add yourself as a member, we can go after the fact and edit that for you. But you'll have to contact us for help. And so in order to do that, just go back to Cascade CMS, select support form, same thing, security and permissions, explain what happened, and we can go in and add you as a user for that group so that you can see it again. So now if I go back in here and assume Joyce's identity once more, go to administration, under groups, now there's Joyce test. So once you create a group though, your job isn't done. You have to go and assign that group to some content. So I'm going to go to the UAlberta website. I'm going to go to the About section. I'm going to go to Leadership. So let's just assume that the Shane test group was something that we created to have access to this folder and only this folder. Once you find that folder within your content, you have to go to edit. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I need to do this as Shane for the purpose of this test. Okay, let's do that again. There's what I was looking for. Looking for access. So under access, you have the option to set whether or not a group has read or write access to a folder. So you can see right now, this leadership folder, administrators like myself have write access. This group called President Access Administrator has read access, and then those people who have the UAlberta Global Group have write access. Now, if I wanted to give the test group that I created write access, I select write, I go to groups here, I'm going to type in Shane test. There's my Shane test group. I choose that, and now I update. And if I go back here to check access, there's my test group. Now, all I've done at this point in time is added access to this folder. That permission hasn't populated all the way down the page yet, or all the way down the folder yet. So if you can see here, if I'm under a subpage, my access is not there. So now I need to go back up here and go access for contents. So what this does is it actually cascades down permission to the groups below. So if I go here and I want to copy user and group access rights from current folder, so that will allow me to cascade down all of the accesses at the top level folder down to each page below. So I will cancel that. I'm not going to do that this time, but that's essentially how you assign access to groups. So as a site administrator, you can create your own groups, and then once you have those groups, you can assign those group specific folders within Cascade, and the people who are within that group can edit that folder. Now, if somebody has global access, then their ability to see the website supersedes any individual folder that you have. So if you've already given somebody group access, any subfolder is kind of redundant. So if you want to limit somebody to only a subfolder, you have to remove their global access. So in this case, that's what I'm going to do with Joyce. I only want her to be able to see the Shane test stuff, so I'm going to remove her global access, submit that. And now if Joyce were to log in, she would be able to see the content that was assigned to the Shane test group and the content that was assigned to the Joyce test group, which we haven't done any of that yet. So that is user access. Like I said, the main thing to take away from this is that you have the full list of users here. If you can't find the person that you're looking for, you need to send us a message so we can add them to this list. And when it comes to adding permissions, you really want to think about the two different types of groups that we created. The access level group, which allows people to see certain options within the software, and then the content level groups, which allows you to assign which content within a site somebody can see, whether that's global, in which case they can see the whole site, or if you start to create your own groups to break out specific folders that you want people to be able to edit and publish and write new content to. So that is it for user access. My short video ended up being over 20 minutes, but I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you do need assistance, you can find contacts on this page, as well as submit a help form. And thank you very much.